All right, everyone, welcome back to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today. I want to give a shout out to our Facebook audience and live streaming audiences on YouTube and at conduitnews.com and on live stream. It's facebook.com/conduitnews if you want to watch online. And I also want to give a shout out to all the terrestrial listening stations, and especially right now our affiliate KARV there in the River Valley in the Russellville area. And the reason I mention that is because right now we actually have Dr. Joe Cloud from the Russellville area, and he is running for House District 71 as a Republican for state representative. Good morning, Dr. Cloud.
Good morning, Josh.
Well, welcome to the show. I wanted to have you on to just have you talk about your race and how it's going. And you know, I think don't believe you've been on the show before, so kind of broader topics. Just a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office.
Well, Josh, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. My wife Cherry and I moved to Russellville in the River Valley in 1986. After finishing a obstetrics gynecology residency at University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences in Little Rock. We established our home here and have been very blessed. I had a very blessed and great practice for over 28 years here. And about a year ago, Josh, after I had retired, started having some conversations with Senator Greg Standridge, and even after he became ill, every conversation I had with Greg would always go back to politics, and he kind of sparked my interest, I guess you might say, and then I had conversations with other folks. It's easy to sit on the sidelines, Josh. It's easy to not be involved. But when something gets on your heart, you go ahead and hopefully you step up. And so that's kind of what's brought me to this arena and what I'm calling a second career. I desire to continue to serve the people of the River Valley and the people of the state of Arkansas. And I think I can do that in the House of Representatives.
Great. Okay. So you mentioned you are a doctor from the Russellville area, but on your Facebook page, I'm looking there and got some other notes here. You know that you're a conservative, pro-life, and pro-constitution. So just talk a little bit about that and the issues that are passionate to you.
Okay, I appreciate that, Josh. You don't have enough time for me to talk about pro-life. I promise you that. But in a nutshell, I've been pro-life all my life. I've been very active locally in the Choices Pregnancy Resource Center. I've been very active in the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Very troubled by the fact that we have legally aborted over 60 million Americans now, and that's more than all of our wars combined. We've lost Americans in tragedies. In all of those combined numbers, we've aborted more human life than that. There's really two people that suffer with abortion. It's not just the unborn child, Josh. The statistics have proven that women who have undergone abortion suffer from depression. They suffer from an increased risk of substance abuse, suicide, even other medical issues, not to mention their reproductive organs only, but even breast cancer. So it's a huge issue for our nation. We started down this path in 1973, and there have been recent efforts to try to reverse some of the pro-abortion legislation, and I'm certainly on board for that. I am 100% pro-life.
Great.
You know,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, everyone. You're listening to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters in for Paul today. And man, do we have a packed show. So much news came out yesterday, specifically about the culture of corruption that we are still seeing in this state. Rusty Cranford has changed his plea agreement, has pleaded guilty, and has now implicated not only John Woods, who's been convicted, not only Hank Wilkins, who's entered a plea deal, but now Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, who is described as Senator A in the plea agreement, has been implicated for accepting bribes, and we will get into that, but huge news there. Also, later in the show, we're going to be speaking with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education about free speech issues, and also later in the show, another huge news story out yesterday on the Medical Marijuana Commission. We talked about it yesterday. The letter that was submitted under seal has been released, and we'll get to that letter, and the reason it was submitted under seal is because Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, had to let the court know that one of the commissioners on the Medical Marijuana Commission was there was an attempt to bribe them to be able to ensure a license went to a specific company. So we'll break all of that down. We'll get through the plea agreement. We'll talk about the medical marijuana bribery coming up. But today is Friday, and so you know what that means on Conduit News Radio. It is Johnny Cash Friday. Now, I do want to let the online audience know at facebook.com/Conduit News. We're not going to be able to play the Johnny Cash music online today, but everyone on the terrestrial stations will be able to hear that. So a big show coming up today. So if you are listening online, I ask you to share the Facebook Live video, facebook.com/Conduit News. But let's go ahead and jump right into the news story and the headline from the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette from Dave Perozik and Doug Thompson, who was tweeting yesterday, who was in the courtroom whenever Rusty Cranford changed his plea deal. And the headline is Lobbyist Pleads Guilty in Bribery Scheme, Governor's Nephew Implicated. That's right. Nephew number 2 has basically all but been, he hasn't been charged yet, but he's been implicated here as Senator A as accepting bribes. So let's just dive right into this. Doug Thompson does a good job breaking down the plea agreement and what all has come out. So this was the hearing held in Springfield, Missouri yesterday. It says State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson of Little Rock accepted payoffs along with former state lawmakers Hank Wilkins of Pine Bluff, who has already entered a plea deal, and John Woods of Springdale, who is now a convicted felon, from lobbyist Milton Rusty Cranford, according to Cranford's guilty plea Thursday in federal court. Hutchinson, the son of former U.S. Senator Tim Hutchinson and nephew of Governor Asa Hutchinson, denied any wrongdoing through his attorney. That's right, Jeremy Hutchinson is maintaining he has done nothing wrong and nothing unethical. Jeremy Hutchinson was an attorney under contract with Preferred Family Healthcare, the nonprofit that Cranford worked for, Tom and Benita Koss worked for. Previously AO Opportunities, and the string of entities they're involved with goes on. And it talks here, it says the plea documents describe $500,000 in payoffs made to Senator A. And so again, this is another plea agreement where we see, not explicit names used. It doesn't say Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, it just says Senator A. But in the plea agreement, it explicitly states specific bills that Senator A filed. And much like Hank Wilkins' plea agreement, you can connect the dots very quickly with a simple search on the Arkansas legislator website. And when you do that, we find out that Senator A is Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew. So Jeremy Hutchinson, Senator A, allegedly accepted bribes, attorney's fees, and gifts that included tickets to the 2013 World Series. He was paid $7,500 a month as an attorney by Preferred Family Healthcare beginning in 2013, according to the plea. That amount was raised to $9,000 a month in 2014. Senator A filed Senate Bill 62 of 2015 and Senate Bill 655 of the same year, the documents say. And this is where we connect the dots. Hutchinson sponsored those bills, legislative records show. Preferred Family, headquartered in Springfield, Missouri, is a behavioral health provider with 47 locations in Arkansas. It also has operations in Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, and 2 clinics in Illinois. This is Mr. Hutchinson's attorney. It says, I have read Mr. Cranford's plea agreement. It clearly mischaracterizes Mr. Hutchinson's work as a practicing attorney and part-time legislator, said Tim Dudley of Little Rock, Hutchinson's attorney. Quote, Mr. Hutchinson has done nothing illegal or unethical. Wow. Jeremy Hutchinson is maintaining and stating through his attorney that he has done nothing illegal or unethical after already being implicated in 2 separate plea agreements. And so we'll get to more about, when's the ball going to drop? When is Jeremy Hutchinson going to be indicted? Will he be indicted? Why may he not be indicted? And what influence may the governor have over any pending indictments for his nephew? The article goes on that Wilkins received $88,000 in checks and undetermined amount of cash. Talks about what Woods received. Cranford pleaded guilty Thursday morning of 1 count of federal program bribery for his role in bribing Arkansas lawmakers from 2010 to 2017. For 7 years, Rusty Cranford was traveling the state, bribing state legislators. He was Arkansas director of Preferred Family during that time and a lobbyist for the nonprofit company and other groups. The bribery charge carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Mr. Cranford's guilty plea contains admissions and allegations which demonstrate clearly the extent to which Preferred Family Healthcare was victimized by the actions of former employees and representatives of PFH. Reginald McAllen, spokesman for the nonprofit group, said Thursday. Governor Hutchinson said Thursday he quickly reviewed information in the plea agreement, noting the 63 pages of plea documents. Hutchinson said, quote, "It is a complex case, and so this needs to be reviewed much more carefully," he told reporters. But without any doubt, the allegations that are contained in the indictment and the factual statement are profoundly serious and undermine the system of legislative process that the public relies on. It undermines the confidence that the public has in their government, so the allegations are very serious, and I'm very troubled by the allegations that have been made. So that's Governor Asa Hutchinson's comment to the Democrat Gazette, but let's go ahead and switch over now that we're on this part here. So you just heard Governor Asa Hutchinson's statement that we just read. Says it undermines the system of legislative process and that the public relies on. Well, Talk Business has an article out last night, and the headline is Governor Hutchinson addresses medical marijuana bribery allegations, which we'll get to later on, and the identity of Senator A. And when we look in here, it talks first about the medical marijuana bribe attempt, but as we scroll down the subheadline, Senator A should resign if indicted. It says, concerning allegations in federal court filings involving an unnamed lawmaker, which has now been, pretty much outed as Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, and speculation for months that Jeremy Hutchinson would be next to fall in the federal probe, Hutchinson said this. So he just made a statement about saying how awful this makes the process look. It undermines the legislative process that the public relies on. It undermines the confidence that the public has in their government. That's his statement to the Democrat Gazette. Another statement that's captured by Talk Business said, if Senator A is indicted, then he should resign. When pressed asked if his nephew would resign, if he turned out to be Senator A, response. And he also said, since Senator A is not named in the indictment, I don't want to presuppose anything and get ahead of the facts. Are you kidding me? He has just made almost totally contradictory statements there. And honestly, that's a little cryptic when I read that. If Senator A is indicted, then he should resign. Does the governor know something, that we don't know? This is almost exactly the response that came out after Senator Jake Files. The information was stacking up on him. There was a sworn affidavit by an FBI agent. Then the line was, well, you're innocent till you're proven guilty. I guess the new standard in ethics in Arkansas is until you're taken away in handcuffs, don't resign, don't say anything unethical has been wrong, don't stand up, speak out, or anything like that. Just wait until they're taken away in handcuffs or they're indicted or plead guilty. I mean, this is just ridiculous. So let's go now to the plea agreement and get into some of the meat of this. And for our online audience, if you want to see the plea agreement, we have it pulled up there, and we'll go through it. We'll just start off on page 1 of the plea agreement for Rusty Cranford. If you're just joining us, he has pleaded guilty. He is implicated and admitted to bribing former State Senator John Woods, former legislator Hank Wilkins, and current Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew, who is described as Senator A in this plea agreement. Excuse me. So let's look here. The defendant agrees to and hereby does plead guilty to the single count information that is federal program bribery. The defendant also agrees to forfeit to the U.S. the property described in the forfeiture allegation. Not sure if we'll have time to go through that, but basically as part of this plea agreement, Rusty Cranford has agreed to pay back $3.7 million in illegally obtained money through these bribes and fraudulent practices. When we go to page 2 and subsection B there, it talks about defendant and others bribed public officials for legislative actions. The first there talks about how John Woods was bribed. He was bribed in the form of money and other things of value. Arkansas State Legislator Henry Hank Williams the same, and then Arkansas Senator A, and they are bribed to provide favorable legislative action for Cranford and Preferred Family Health, the charity, including but not limited to steering Arkansas GIF grant money to the charity, holding up agency budgets, initiating legislative audits for this rating company that they basically wanted to change the rating company so that their companies that were getting the behavioral health contracts were not rated poorly. And they sponsored, filed, and voted for legislative bills in return for these bribes. Cranford transmitted money and other things of value by different manners and means, including but not limited to providing cash to Woods, facilitating employment to individuals close to Woods, providing cash and checks to a church where Wilkins was a pastor, and providing cash and job referrals to Arkansas Senator A. The next paragraph there goes more into what's described as Senator A, who's been linked by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette as Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. It talks more there about the bribes. And then when you go to the bottom of page 3, this is the details of what some of these bribes entailed from Rusty Cranford to Senator A, which is Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, who has been implicated here. Between the dates alleged in the information, Cranford directly and indirectly gave Arkansas Senator A cash, checks, wire transfers, tickets to sporting events, including luxury box seats to the 2013 World Series. That's right, luxury box seats and tickets to the 2013 World Series. Retainers, attorney's fees, referrals to provide services to Cranford, the charity, the lobbying firms, other Cranford clients. In or about April 2013, Cranford facilitated the hiring of Arkansas Senator A by Preferred Family Health Care. Arkansas Senator A was paid $7,500 a month, which increased to $9,000 a month in or about May 2014 until in or about 2017. So just last year, he was still being paid by Preferred Family Health Care. Gosh. In exchange, Arkansas Senator A performed legislative acts that were favorable to Cranford, the charity, Cranford clients, and others, including but not limited to holding up agency budgets, initiating legislative audits, sponsoring, filing, and voting for legislative bills, and influencing the award of GIF funds to the charity and to Cranford clients. When we go down on page 4, talks more about Arkansas Senator A steered GIF funds to another Cranford client entity H. Specifically, between January 20th, 2015 and March 2nd, 2015, Arkansas Senator A filed 2 bills, Senate Bill 62 and Senate Bill 655. I went and looked up those bills, and those were GIF monies to go to a Teach for America program. Before we go to break, just page 5 here. Also in our 2015, Arkansas Senator A advanced legislation which sought to change the definition of the term independent contractor for purposes of overtime and other workplace benefits. It talks about also towards the end there where language contains specific statutory language that was emailed to Arkansas Senator A on March 4th, 2015 by person number 9 for inclusion in the bill. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, this means they have Jeremy Hutchinson's emails. They must, or at least some of them. That's where I know that's a lot of information. We'll come back over this break and try to break that down even more and talk a little bit about, okay, well, Senator Hutchinson has been implicated now in Hank Wilkins' plea agreement. He's been all but thrown under the table in this plea agreement as accepting bribes, including tickets to the World Series and, being hired as their attorney, which, that's what we'll get to in a minute. But this is the whole point of a bill Linda Collins Smith tried to run, and really Brian King's Medicaid disclosure bill. This Medicaid disclosure bill would have, brought to light that he was getting paid all these years by Preferred Family Health Care. The bill that Linda Collins Smith tried to run in 2017 would have prohibited this type of behavior entirely, where basically attorneys and consultants can hide behind this attorney-client privilege and take money to run bills for their clients and take these kickbacks and try to make it to where it's not illegal. And I remember Senator Hutchinson taking to the floor of the chamber and speaking out against this. And you know what? Unfortunately, Linda Collins Smith and Brian King were targeted by Senator Hutchinson's uncle, Governor Asa Hutchinson, because they were fighting for ethics reform, because they were fighting for transparency, because they were fighting for more limited government. And folks, if we don't wake up and pay more attention to what's going on in our state government, this is only going to continue until the voters send a clear message. We're not going to do this. We're going to help the people who are trying to expose this. This is only going to continue. So we're going to have to take a break right now. A lot of information. The headline takeaway, Rusty Cranford has pleaded guilty and has implicated Jeremy Hutchinson and has pled guilty to bribing Senator A, which has been described as Jeremy Hutchinson by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. So we will take a break and be right back after this. Happy Johnny Cash Friday. All right, everyone, welcome back. You're listening to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul. We just broke down, and I encourage everyone to go listen to the first 20 minutes of the show, where we broke down the new plea agreement that Rusty Cranford has entered into. He has pled guilty to federal program bribery and has further implicated Senator A, which the Arkansas Democrat Gazette has pointed out that they believe that is Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew, as taking bribes and also working as an attorney for Cranford, his clients, and Preferred Family Health Care. And so I think the big question a lot of people have, and I have, is, all these chips have fallen, and a lot of this, points back to Senator Hutchinson. It's very explicit in this plea agreement, but it was also, he was most likely implicated as Senator A in Hank Wilkins' plea agreement. And so it's like, why has he not been charged with anything? Why has he not been indicted? And so it got me thinking. I was doing some research, and if we can look at, the U.S. attorneys for the federal district courts, that's who has, the prosecutorial discretion to bring this up. And I'll try to get this in real quick. But when you look at the Western District of Arkansas, U.S. Attorney Dwayne Dak Keys actually worked for the Asa Hutchinson Law Group. And so direct ties there to Governor Asa Hutchinson, Jeremy Hutchinson's uncle, the U.S. Attorney in the Western District. But it would actually, I think, charges would probably be filed in the Eastern District Court. And so the Eastern District Court U.S. Attorney is Cody Highland. And when you look at transparency.arkansas.gov and you search for Highland, I've been told by a source that Cody Highland, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, where Jeremy Hutchinson would probably be indicted if he's going to be, Jana B. Highland is listed as working for Asa Hutchinson's Department of Finance and Administration as DFA Program Manager with a salary of $40,000. And so all these questions are, all these other names have come out, all these other people have been convicted, pled guilty, been indicted, but Senator Hutchinson, who's all mixed up in this as well, has not. Why is that? And so you can call it, speculation or what, maybe at best, but when you have the U.S. Attorney in the Western District of Arkansas and Eastern District of Arkansas with close ties to the governor, whose nephew is the person in controversy, Senator A here, I think people are probably asking a lot of questions. I know I am, and that's just where we're at, but we're going to have to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
So mentioned being a constitutionalist. The Constitution, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the Republican Party, Josh, the Constitution is a literal document.
Mm-hmm.
The United States, and I found this out visiting with people, the United States is a republic. It is not a democracy.
That's right. Thank you for saying that. Many people are confused by that.
I've been really amazed at the number of people that I've talked to that don't realize the difference or just think that we're a democracy. A democracy, the majority rules. They can tell me to wear all gray clothes and to drive a certain automobile or to not be able to drive an automobile or whatever just by majority vote. But a republic is different from that. The republic has guaranteed by our Constitution the power is held by the people, and then the people give that power to their elected officials. And as you stated in your opening, I'm running for House of, and I emphasize the word representative. If I'm not representing my constituency, I'm not doing my job, because that's part of what a republic is. The exercise of the power that's given by the people is under the set of laws as laid out in the Constitution. So I'm very much a constitutionalist. I believe the Constitution has some guarantees to the individual against the majority. We have a right to speak. We have a right to think. We have a right to worship. We have a right to vote. And those are things that are blessings for the United States of America that other countries, a lot of them don't have those rights. And that's sad to me. But we are a republic, and we are protected as far as our life, our liberty, and our property by the government. But we don't need to let the government go beyond that.
Yeah, man, that's great to hear. That's really refreshing. Unfortunately, we hear, from politicians, I hear a lot is, well, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, that kind of a thing, which, that's part of it. But to hear a candidate for office, going back to the original founding document that set up the government and defines what the role of government is, like you've done, I mean, that's really refreshing. And just thanks for sharing that with us. And so this is House District 71. Has he called in? All right, welcome back to the show. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul this morning. And here in a moment, we're waiting on Zachary Greenberg from FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education. He'll be calling in when we'll be talking about free speech, and specifically free speech on campus and the work he is doing. I had planned and done some research preparing for the show today to talk a lot about free speech. But based on the way the news broke, we're just going to have a truncated focus on free speech today. But coming up at 7 o'clock, we will have Hannah Webb. She is here in studio. And we'll have Alice Norman, and we'll get their perspectives on free speech on campus and free speech in general, really, but specifically on campus and what their experiences were there just coming out of college. So if you missed the first half of the show this morning, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. Get the podcast. You can get that coming up here at about 7:30 or so. The podcast of the first hour will be available in the Apple Store. But the big news is the plea agreement of Rusty Cranford. He has pleaded guilty to federal program bribery and has further implicated Senator A, described as Senator Jeremy Hutchinson by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, as the senator for accepting bribes, including tickets to the 2013 World Series in a luxury box, more $7,500 paid as an attorney per month, up to $9,000 per month. And mentioned it just briefly, but Linda Collins Smith ethics bill from 2017 that Terry Rice also spoke in favor of on the Senate floor. This is what they're trying to prevent. Senator Linda Collins Smith, Senator Brian King with his Medicaid disclosure bill. This kind of corrupt, just despicable behavior of our elected officials betraying the public trust, abuse of public trust, is what they're trying to prevent, shed light, transparency on our government in Little Rock. And the taxpayers are the losers in this. A lot of this money that was directed was taxpayer money, a lot of it Medicaid money. directed and found its way back to Rusty Cranford, and then he directed it back as kickbacks to legislators and even to some of the executives from the nonprofit. Something else that came out in the plea agreement that I was reading through was some of this money, or a lot of it, actually went to two campaigns. It says here on page 5 of the plea agreement, Cranford, person 1, 2, 3, 5, and others known and unknown, devised and executed multiple schemes to embezzle, steal, and unjustly enrich themselves at the expense of the charity, including causing the charity to misapply its funds for unlawful contributions to the campaigns of elected public officials, jeopardizing the charity's tax-exempt status, which I don't think anyone was ever worried about jeopardizing the tax-exempt status of preferred family health care. It didn't seem like. In order to increase the charity's total receipts, so they had more funds available from which to embezzle and steal. They were directing this Medicaid taxpayer money. They were giving it to the politicians to pass the Medicaid expansion, to keep it funding, to increase it, and then it found its way back to the politicians in some cases. It found its way back to these corrupt executives over at Preferred Family Health. I know Tom and Benita Goss just come to mind offhand as people who've been implicated in this. I think Tom Goss, if I read through this, is probably person 1 in this plea agreement. Another bribe that came out in a direct result of this bribe is that they caused the charity to spend substantial amounts of funds on lobbying and political advocacy, which violated both the charity's tax-exempt status and the restrictions imposed by law. What a lot of people don't understand is a 501c3 is a charity. You know, a lot of people would think of a church or the Red Cross or something like that, but there's, you know, millions and millions of 501c3 charities, but they're restricted as part of their tax-exempt status and their status of being able to donate and receive a tax deduction. You cannot engage in political advocacy. You definitely cannot advocate for the election or defeat of a candidate. You can do, no substantial part can be lobbying and advocacy, which that's always kind of a gray area. But a 501c3, you know, they can't elect officials. They can't be lobbying them. A substantial part. 501c4s can engage in issue speech and advocacy. PACs can engage in that. Candidates for office. And so right here, you know, I would argue the tax-exempt status of this organization is probably on the line. When we look over at page 6 of the indictment, person 1, who I believe to be, you know, Tom Goss, the way it's described, it says person 1 demanded Cranford pay him approximately half of the bonus payments the Cranford Coalition obtained for the charity. Another outcome of the bribes, it caused the charity to pay excessive amounts to and use its resources for their for-profit companies. This is something that came out in the John Woods trial, is this money that was supposed to be going to groups like AmeriWorks and Decision Point and working for behavioral health somehow found its way back to Tom and Benita Goss through their for-profit companies. It's just a mess. Again, causing the charity to make payments for real estate unrelated to the charity's mission, including the charity's rental payments to Cranford for properties he owned in Florida and Texas. Well, at least, Florida and Texas don't have state income tax, so they knew what they're doing there, I guess. Causing the charity to pay their personal expenses, including by way of their extensive use of corporate credit cards for which the charity paid the bills. They're just running around roughshod, all this money flush with cash, from a lot of it from taxpayer Medicaid money, spending it on whatever they wanted, no accountability, no transparency, no sunshine on this. And now the standard is, according to Governor Asa Hutchinson, until they're taken away in handcuffs, until they're indicted, they shouldn't resign. They shouldn't, be held accountable. You shouldn't talk about that. Don't rush to judgment. Don't rush to convict these people. They're innocent until proven guilty. This is the same exact line of thinking that came out when Senator Jake Files in the sworn FBI affidavit came out and implicated him in all that he had done. And by the way, we read earlier, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, through his attorney, is maintaining he has done nothing wrong, nothing illegal, nothing unethical. That's exactly what Senator Jake Files said. He said, this is, a total misunderstanding. I have text messages to prove all this. Next thing you know, he's pleading guilty. It's just, at some point, the people are going to have to get angry enough and care enough about what's going on in our government, or this is only going to continue. Let's go back into the plea agreement. Enjoying the use of charity-provided premium tickets for sporting events, causing the charity to lend significant funds to themselves and their for-profit companies. When we go over to page 8 of this plea agreement, something that really stuck out in my mind was this chart here we have on page 8. And if you're watching online on facebook.com/Conduit News, you can follow along with us. When you look at the calendar year, you have the charity Preferred Family Healthcare, Entity A, Entity B, the Cranford entities, and then the total. So we talked a little bit about at 6 o'clock how Rusty Cranford, as part of his plea agreement, has been ordered to pay back $3.7 million. It's 3.5 there, and then later on it talks about 3.7 million total. And when you look at these numbers in this chart, you see 2010, okay, $83,000 total. 2011, $213,000 total. 2012, $312,000. Then in 2013, $1.5 million. It goes from $312,000 to $1.5 million. And this was around the same time that Obamacare Medicaid expansion, previously called the private option, which was what it was called when it passed, now called Arkansas Works, which is now a $2 billion program in and of itself, and Medicaid's grown exponentially elsewhere. But just that program started up around this time, and since then, 337,000, 500,000, 310,000, and then in 2017, still 184,000. Now, I think by 2017, word was really getting out, especially going into 2016. So that's probably why you see the decline there, that this gravy train's kind of going to end. And you kind of saw that in the John Woods trial as well. It was pretty clear they were doing all these investigations starting 2014, 2015, and the money started drying up, and they're trying to cover themselves at that point. So, One thing too, when you think about this, the Arkansas Senate, the new president of the Senate is going to be Senator Jim Hendren. The other nephew, that's right, the other nephew is going to be president of the Senate. His governor's the uncle. Paul talks about how it's basically going to become a state agency. And Senator Hendren came out with a statement, and there's an article several months ago that talked about how, we need to clean up the Senate, we need to focus on ethics, all this and that. And, I honestly I don't think he's really interested in that. I think if he was interested, he'd call for the resignation of Senator Hutchinson, if I'm just honest about it. What I think he's, more interested in is positioning himself for a governor's race in 2022. So, again, the big news, the plea agreement from Rusty Cranford. He has pleaded guilty to federal program bribery, implicated not only, former Senator John Woods. It goes more into detail on him. Goes into detail on Hank Wilkins, who has pleaded guilty for accepting money, including through his church. The funneling of this money to these nonprofits, and then the nonprofits give to the church, and it finds its way back to this legislator, pastor of the church. It's just awful. And then Senator A, who the Arkansas Democrat Gazette has pointed out is likely Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. We've gone through the plea agreement. If you missed that on the first part of the show, I really highly recommend going back and hearing that. We're going to take a break now. We're still waiting on Zachary Greenberg with FIRE, the Foundation Individual Rights in Education. This is a on-campus free speech advocacy group, and we had planned to talk with him, so we're waiting to have him call in. But when we get back, you thought that was big news. Also, another bribery scandal broke yesterday. That's right, two bribery scandals in Arkansas in one day, one dealing with Medicaid fraud, basically, and the other dealing with medical marijuana bribery. The letter we talked about yesterday that was under seal has been released. We'll talk about that. We'll look at that. And, oh yeah, there's another Asa Hutchinson connection on this guy who tried to bribe a medical marijuana commissioner. We'll get to that after the break. Hey, Joe. Hello. Huh?
What does the name Triple R have to do with bail bonds? Well, the Triple R stands for reliable, respectful, and relentless. When in need of bail bonds, you only need one number. Call 866-593-7457. Even if Triple R can't help, they'll take the time to provide you with the numbers of other bond companies in your area that can be of service. That's why they're the hub of Arkansas bail bonds. Triple R Bail Bonds has an app, they're paperless, and always reliable, respectful, and relentless.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Welcome back. Good morning. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today. And we just got a few minutes before the top of the hour. Coming up at 7 o'clock, Hannah Webb will be in studio, or is in studio now, actually. And so we'll talk some about free speech and on campus, and also a little bit about her experience in the recent election and kind of what she learned from that process. And Alice Norman, the new communications director for political strategies, will be in as well to talk about her perspective on free speech on campus. And talking about free speech, there's been a lot of talk recently about this idea of dark money, and we need to get rid of dark money because you know what dark money does? It informs the voters. When we get down to it, it informs the voters. People learn about many times what's already publicly available information. You know, people just will run ads or run mailers and tell people what's going on. And so, you know, some people just don't like that. And so I wanted to go back to an opinion piece by Paul Greenberg with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I thought this was really spot on. It talks about this idea of dark money versus what Chief Justice Courtney Goodson did. She tried to silence free speech with her lawsuits to pull ads off the air. And so Paul Greenberg, the article is "Shut Up," she explains. Her Honor Courtney Goodson's gag rule. When all else fails a campaigner, why bother with the pros and cons of the issues and all the other pitfall of politics when you can simply impose a gag rule on the opposition instead? Which seems to be the campaign strategy of Her Honor Courtney Goodson. If just using the political equivalent of a truncheon can be mistaken for a strategy instead of just a desperate delusion. This decision of hers should rightly be considered less of an argument for her re-election to the state Supreme Court, but for her impeachment, is what Paul Greenberg says. Mrs. Justice Goodson, the wife of class action king John Goodson, now seems to have taken on Arkansas's journalistic broadcasting fraternity, seeking to shut it up by the court order now that mere persuasion has failed. The list of defendants in her ill-conceived lawsuit runs the gamut from Tribune Broadcasting in Northwest Arkansas to Tegna Incorporated, which includes Little Rock's KTHV. And, oh yes, let's not overlook this telling detail. The spouse of the same judge who issued this restraining order against Arkansas's press received income from John Goodson's law firm headquartered in Texarkana, all of which might confirm the public suspicion that they, meaning the members of this state's bar, are all in this racket together. Why in the world would a fair, unbiased voter choose to cast his ballot for a candidate like Courtney Goodson when other candidates are seeking his vote and support this election year? Beats me. This Paul Greenberg opinion piece. John Toll and Chris Keller, counselors at law, would make fine editorial writers should they ever tire of their day jobs, for they've summed up the significance of this case all too well. By entering a restraining order, even on a temporary basis, without hearing from the opposing side, they warn, the court has completely banned campaign speech without notice and without providing Tribune, the other media defendants, or anyone interested in free speech with any avenue to be heard in court. This case is an affront to not only the First Amendment, but due process. Toll and Keller have given voice to one of the oldest principles of Anglo-American jurisprudence. Welcome back to the defense of free speech, whether one agrees or not with what is being said. The spirit of liberty, as the great Leonard Hand once put it, lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies there, no constitution, no law, no court can save it. No constitution, no law, no court can even do much to help it. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which is not too sure that it is right. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which seeks to understand the minds of other men and women. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which weighs their interests alongside its own without bias. Really good work there from Paul Greenberg and talking about the importance of free speech. We're going to have to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today. And do not miss the second hour of the show. We'll be right back.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Out visiting with people. The United States is a republic. It is not a democracy.
That's right. Thank you for saying that. Many people are confused by that.
I've been really amazed at the number of people that I've talked to that don't realize the difference or just think that we're a democracy. You know, a democracy, the majority rules. They can tell me to wear all gray clothes and to drive a certain automobile or to not be able to drive an automobile or whatever just by a majority vote. But a republic is different from that. The republic has guaranteed by our Constitution the power is held by the people, and then the people give that power to their elected officials. And as you stated in your opening, I'm running for House of, and I emphasize the word representative. If I'm not representing my constituency, I'm not doing my job, because that's part of what a republic is. The exercise of the power that's given by the people is under the set of laws as laid out in the Constitution. So I'm very much a constitutionalist. I believe the Constitution has some guarantees to the individual against the majority. You know, we have a right to speak. We have a right to think. We have a right to worship. We have a right to vote. And those are things that are blessings for the United States of America that other countries, a lot of them don't have those rights. And that's sad to me. But we are a republic, and we are protected as far as our life, our liberty, and our property by the government. But we don't need to let the government go beyond that.
Yeah, man, that's great to hear. That's really refreshing. You know, unfortunately, we hear, you know, from politicians, you know, well, I hear a lot is, you know, well, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, that kind of a thing, which, you know, that's part of it. But to hear a candidate for office, you know, going back to the original founding document that set up the government and defines what the role of government is, like you've done, I mean, that's really refreshing. And just thanks for sharing that with us. And so this is House District 71. Ken Henderson is not running for re-election. So it's you, the Republican, versus a Democrat opponent. And so remind everyone, I know it's the Russellville area, but I wasn't sure, you know, if it's just Russellville or what the whole district encompasses there.
Josh, it is primarily Russellville. District 71 extends up toward Dover, but not to Dover. It extends toward Atkins, but not, to Pottsville, but not to Pottsville, not into Pottsville. And then it's bordered on the southern by the Arkansas River. So it's primarily Russellville proper.
Okay, great. All right. So, you know, you've laid out, you know, your pro-life position, pro-constitution position, conservative position. You know, how can people maybe find out more about you, you know, Facebook or Twitter or, you know, website? I'm not sure what you have there, but if you have events going on, or how can people, you know, interact with you during this campaign season?
I'm easy to get a hold of, Josh. They can contact me directly if they would wish to. I am on Facebook, Cloud for State Rep, and easy to find there. And I'm accessible. I'll be glad to talk to anyone. Doesn't matter about your party affiliation. It's just my heart's desire to serve. You know, if I could say quickly, you know, I went back to several conversations I had with Greg, and one of the greatest blessings he received out of being a senator was when people would call him with what to them were insurmountable problems, and he was able to help them navigate because of his position. So, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to serve the people of Russellville and the people of the state of Arkansas.
Well, that's great. You know, the heart of a servant, that's
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today. You reached the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. And if you missed the first hour of the program, I highly recommend going getting the podcast or going online to conduitnews.com or facebook.com/conduitnews where we're live streaming and watching that. You can get it on demand after the show today, because what we broke in the first hour was about Rusty Cranford and his New Deal plea agreement to plead guilty in exchange, I assume, for working more and providing more information to the government. And specifically, the most breaking news in that story, I think, was the implication of Senator A, which has been described as Senator Jeremy Hutchinson by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, that Senator A also took bribes from Rusty Cranford, including luxury box seats to the 2013 World Series, including attorney's fees in the amount of $7,500 a month and then $9,000 a month as recent as last year. So Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, has not been indicted. We talked about that and why that might be happening, speculated a bit. And then coming up later, we'll get more into another bribery scheme. That's right, 2 bribery schemes in one day broke yesterday here in Arkansas. The culture of corruption is alive and well. And so we'll get to that, but go back and hear the first hour. But now we have 2 special guests in the studio. If you're watching online, you see them here in the studio with us. We have Hannah Webb and Alice Norman, and I'll just have them kind of reintroduce themselves to the audience. They've both been on the show before, but we're going to talk a little bit about free speech and their perspectives on that. But Hannah and then Alice, if you'll just kind of reintroduce yourselves to the audience and tell us more about who you are, and we'll jump into some free speech talk.
Sure. So I'm Hannah Webb. Better bring the mic closer to myself. So I'm Hannah Webb. Again, I'm kind of a veteran of the show, and I'm always happy to be here. I served this last year, my senior year of college, as the Arkansas State College Republican Chair, and now I'm going to make the big girl transition into law school. So that's what's going on in my life right now.
Great.
My name is Alice Norman. I recently graduated from Ole Miss this past May, and now I'm working for political strategies and communications. So just loving life and finally living the adult world, which has been new and scary all at the same time.
Well, that's great. I'm an attorney with political strategies, and so we're really excited to have Alice on. She's already doing great work in increasing the marketing communications of what our clients are doing, what Conduit for Action, Conduit Media Group is doing, and really excited to see the growth there. But earlier today, we talked a little bit about, free speech and the importance of free speech, and we focused a little more on dark money and the aspect where people don't like dark money because you put money behind speech, and that's a pretty powerful thing. And as we know, and has been ruled by the Supreme Court, money is speech. But so that's something we want to talk about and get your perspective. I know Hannah has had several dealings with some free speech issues on campus. But I wanted to share this quote from U.S. Supreme Court Louis Brandeis, and it talks about speech against our government, political speech. And he was talking about the U.S. Founding Fathers. That's the context of this quote. And he said, "They believed that freedom to think as you will and to speak as you think are means indispensable to the discovery and spread of political truth. That without free speech in assembly, discussion would be futile. That with them, discussion affords ordinarily adequate protection against the dissemination of noxious doctrine, that the greatest menace to freedom is an inert people. Believing in the power of reason as applied through public discussion, they eschewed silence coerced by law, the argument of force in its worst form." So that goes back, several hundred years. The context of that to our the context of our founding fathers, and so this idea of free speech is really coming under attack in our country, but especially on our college campuses. And Hannah, I know you've had some experience with that, and I think you have an update on those experiences as well. So let the audience know and speak, directly into the microphone there.
Sure. So I've talked about it before on the program, how I got knee-deep into the lawsuit with Turning Point USA and Arkansas State University. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, a couple of my college Republicans tried to start a Turning Point USA, which is a small government advocate organization, chapter on campus. And so when all that came to light and they set up their booth on campus, they got forcefully removed and banned from campus because of the speech that that organization brought. And they had signs that said big government sucks and things like that. And that was a big no-no to Arkansas State University. And so the lawsuit trudged through, and Arkansas State tried to get it thrown out. That didn't happen. And so my most recent update has been that Arkansas State has agreed to comply and write a new free speech policy under the guidance of legislation. So they want the legislators to pass a model for them to kind of mirror their new free speech policy off of. So that's a victory for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're really excited about that. And so I'm very interested and eager to see how that plays out. And something I have not ever talked about on air was back before Jan Morgan announced that she was actually running for governor. And we had our first initial meeting that I've talked about a little bit, where the college Republicans got to meet with Jan before she ever announced, and we got to hear her out and hear her policies and her ideas about things, which is when she hooked me in to be a supporter. When it first, the initial talks of her coming on, possibly coming on campus, which we ended up not doing, we met off campus, the Young Democrats caught word of this and were not very happy about it. And I got some very stern emails requesting that we not bring Jan on campus and that she not come, for the fact that we want to make all students feel welcome because of her stance on not training people of the Muslim faith with those ideology in her gun range. So that turned into a very interesting discussion.
So I want to make sure we get this right. So the Young Democrats were opposed to hearing, a known conservative Republican speaker on campus in any way, in any form, because of past speech she had made and past practices. Did I understand that right?
They flat out asked me, we ask that you do not bring her on campus, point blank. And I mean, I have the exact emails that I would be happy to share with everyone. But they did not even want her to come and speak on campus to eliminate the possibility that somebody feel uncomfortable by her presence.
Now, I'm sure the college Republicans countered and said, well, we oppose all speech by any Democrats or any liberals, right? Because that's what conservatives do. They try to silence speech. Is
right,
that
absolutely. No, we handled it very professionally, and it ended up being fine, which they did. Our plans were never to have her on ASU campus, mainly for their gun constrictions. And we didn't want anything unsafe for the fact that they couldn't defend themselves if something were to happen. So we had already chose to use a third-party site, but they were not aware of that. So I let her give her a little spiel, and it was all good and fine. But it was just another chance to stop us from bringing our ideals to campus and expressing that with everyone else.
Wow.
It really reminds me of that quote, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll fight for your right to say it, And what does it mean to legislate policy about, like, what free speech is, Like, how do you put, like, confines on that? It should just be an open right, How do you say this is what you can say and this is what you can't say? I mean, that kind of takes out the definition of free.
Yeah, I kind of hope that legislation says, see the First Amendment or free speech, period. Like, nothing, we don't need more than that. We don't need any ambiguity in that.
Well, ASU's original free speech policy is very interesting. It basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, says that we recognize your right to free speech. However, Arkansas State University is not a public forum, and you can only express free speech in designated areas with our permission. So that was our original free speech policy, which is very obviously very broken.
Okay. Well, Hannah and Alice, if you'll stick with us, we'll come back after this break and talk some more about some issues and hear some more about Alice's perspective. But we got to go to a break right now. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today, and we'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back, everyone. Sorry, I think we're having some technical difficulties. This is the downside of having a guest host. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul Harrell today on Conduit News Radio. And we have with us Hannah Webb and Alice Norman. And we were talking about free speech on campus. Hannah was detailing one about a lawsuit that was actually brought from Turning Point USA that was challenging this idea of a free speech zone. And then also she mentioned how the young Democrats at Arkansas State wanted to totally silence, Jan Morgan from speaking. They just didn't want to have her at all on campus. And we joked how, you always hear that, but it's always one-sided. It's the liberals and Democrats not wanting anything to do with hearing a viewpoint that might, counter their safe space that they need.
Which is very ironic because they're the party of tolerance.
Yeah.
And the party of accepting everyone how they are and so on and so forth. So it's very ironic and quite frankly hypocritical for them to advocate for acceptance when you agree with them, not if you have disagreeing views or if you want to challenge what they think. No, be quiet. So it's a real interesting double standard there.
Yeah. Alice, what was some of your experiences on campus? You graduated from Ole Miss, right?
Mm-hmm. So, just as a public policy student, so that's very tuned towards politics and talking about policy and having these debates almost every day in class, I really felt like a lot of what we said and a lot of what we wrote had to be slanted towards a particular viewpoint, left-leaning viewpoint. And as a conservative, this made me feel like, there's some people in the courses who would go overtly conservative then and do it even more. But for me, I was like, well, then I just feel like I have to be quiet all the time. I felt like really silenced by that, it wasn't just my opinion or maybe I'm offending someone, but it's my own grades, it's my own future being affected by my beliefs, and not beliefs that are unfounded, but beliefs that are based on, rational policy that works and is like helping people. I think that's the end goal of all policy, right? To produce the best society we can all live in. So I'm seeing, this is the way that does that, and then I'm being silenced for that. It just feels like totally oppressive. I think that's one of the great things about conservatism and free speech and having rights and freedom is that there's this big experiment, this big risk that everyone is free to have your own opinion. So, of course, you're going to have diversity of thought, and to silence that diversity of thought, it just takes away from your rights, from your freedom, because in that diversity of thought, you have so much strength. That's how we come up with such a strong country, and to just silence half of it because you don't like it. You don't know how much you're shooting yourself in the own leg.
Yes.
It just takes away.
Very well said. Very well said. I had a law professor that kind of said that was the cure for speech with which you disagree is more speech, not shutting up the other side that you disagree with. It's responding and be able to come up with those arguments to counter that. So very well said, Alice. Now, Hannah, you mentioned earlier about, the campaign, the Jan Morgan campaign. I know you're very active in that, some other campaigns, and we talked a few days ago as kind of your first foray into elections, and sounds like you kind of caught the election bug. So what was your experience with campaigning in elections this last cycle?
Sure. So it was a whirlwind, but I'm very thankful for it, and I have several takeaways from it. And so I kind of have personal takeaways and then takeaways as a state and as a whole. Personally, I learned a lot about campaign law. Things that you learn unless you're completely submerged in a campaign you wouldn't know. I learned finance laws and all kinds of things, where to put yard signs. I learned what a right-of-way was, all kinds of stuff. And then I made great connections all around the state. I got to meet, because I traveled a lot with Jan, and everywhere she'd go, I wanted to be all I could be with her. And I met basically all of your viewers that are so loud and proud for Conduit News. I got to meet and put faces with all of them. So I've got a unique set of connections, and then I made some lifelong friends, and I'm going to value those forever. But as a state as a whole, which is much more important and almost troubling, Arkansas is very uneducated when it comes to the world around us. They're in different ways. So people did not know a primary was going on. They did not know when you vote. There are still people who want to have information on Jane Morgan, and the campaign is over. Yeah. Where have you been? How did you not know? And then people don't have a clue about policy. They don't know what tax increases we've seen. They don't know what tax cuts we've had. We don't know. They don't know about these imaginary tax cuts we've had. And so they either flat out don't have a clue, or they believe that campaign speech rhetoric, which we know that the incumbent was very good at hitting those high points and kind of mimicking what Jan was saying, and they just believed it and ran away with it. They did not take it to that next level and dig just a little deeper, because we know that exposes so much truth. And another big thing I learned is that money talks.
Yeah.
And, you know, we kept saying, you know, we're going to have a Trump effect, going to have the Trump effect. Well, the only difference is Trump had the money.
Yeah.
Yes, he was up against bigger money, but he still had the money. And it talks. And we brought the message of truth. We brought the message that I believe all of Arkansas believes in, or the majority of Arkansas believes in. We just didn't have the money to get that out there. And as much as we want to talk about dark money and the downfalls of it, well, it's kind of the double-edged sword, because you have to have money. So that's a very interesting dynamic that everything brought to it. And then you mentioned us talking, and I think you coined this phrase separate of me, although I came to the conclusion not knowing you'd said it. Arkansas is a land of opportunity. So although I'm very obviously disappointed in how this election turned out, it restored my faith in Arkansas in a way. The people of Arkansas are smarter than what we get credit for. We believe in core values that are meant to make our state prosper, and we want that for our state. And there's so much potential and opportunity that can come out of Arkansas, and I think a movement was started. I think we sparked the interest and really put passion back into 30% of the Arkansas population. So I think it's something to be encouraged, and a great point to move forward from here.
Yeah.
So I leave encouraged and thankful for my state.
Well, good. Yeah, you know, I think one of the first campaigns I got involved in, going door to door, going to events, you know, it's kind of this big thing, and, you know, the outcome, if it doesn't go that way, it can be, you know, upsetting, depressing, all the words we can use there.
Right.
But, you know, the experience you got in that, I think was very valuable, and like you said, money talks, you know. They say, I've heard it said, you don't have to have the most money, you just have to have enough money, and
right.
so, you know, $2 million versus $150,000, that's, you know, that's hard to overcome. But Alice, I'll give you the last word. Anything else you wanted to add on your experience on free speech on campus, or any campaigns? I know you did some work with the Houston GOP, if you wanted to speak to that.
Well, just to, I guess, address Hannah on, you know, the campaign, my program coordinators for my public policy major, they were, you know, talking a lot to us seniors about, you know, what we should move forward with and what words of advice we can take, you know, close to our hearts with us as we graduate. And a lot of us went on, you know, to work in politics or policy or campaigns or whatever. And the best advice that I think I ever received was that it's your smartest to work, I guess not smartest, but in the long term, as much as no one wants it, it's for your best self to go in first for a losing campaign.
It's just my heart's desire to serve. You know, if I could say quickly, you know, I went back to several conversations I had with Greg, and one of the greatest blessings he received out of being a senator was when people would call him with what to them were insurmountable problems, and he was able to help them navigate because of his position. So, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to serve the people of Russellville and the people of the state of Arkansas.
Wow, that's great. You know, the heart of a servant, that's you know, straight from the Bible, and, you know, it's great to hear, you know, Senator Standridge's legacy is living on in others. I'll give you the last word, Dr. Cloud, before we head to break, and just anything else you want to share with the voters out there.
Well, yes, Josh, since you mentioned the Bible, you know, our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, not only to the flag, but then there's that word "and" to the republic for which it stands, and we discussed that, one nation under God.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just like to be able to point out that word God means the Jehovah God. It's the Yeshua of the Old Testament. It's not something that man has made with their own hands. It's not something that we conjure up. The founding fathers believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of I Am. And so that's the God I believe in. And that's who ultimately I want to serve and want to please.
Amen. Well, Dr. Cloud, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate that testimony there as well. Your stand for Christ. It's really refreshing to hear this morning speaking with you, and just want to thank you for coming on and just let us know how we can help, and best of luck to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Josh. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Well, take care. And we are going to go ahead and go to a break here. We want to thank Dr. Joe Cloud for being on. He's running for House District 71 there in Russellville. And that election will be coming up in November. And like he said, he has a Facebook page. I pulled that up. It's Joe A. Cloud, MD, on Facebook. Looks like you can find out some more there and see some pictures and posts he's made about his candidacy for state representative. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today, and we'll be back after this. All right, welcome back to the show. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell, and this is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today. And we're going to wrap up the segment here. We have Hannah Webb and Alice Norman here in the studio with us. We've been talking about free speech on campus, some election experience, and kind of get their perspective on those two issues. And Alice, right before we went to break, we were kind of with you and talking about your experience with some elections and also free speech on campus. So I wanted you to be able to finish your thought there.
Well, just to wrap up that one particular thought, my program coordinator for my major, for public policy, told us, it's for our best interest as like young professionals developing that we first work our absolute hardest for a losing campaign, because then you learn the most and you know what lessons that you need to bring with you for anything else that you're involved with in the future. He says that, the man that told us this advice was a very successful consultant in D.C., and he said that the best people that he had ever had work for him all began with just one really hard campaign that they gave their all and, just had heartbreak over it. So, but more pointedly, working with the GOP in Houston, Texas, last summer, a lot of what I learned is that reach and communication and being able just to talk to people and know who to talk to in terms of who you're going to waste your time on and who is needing this message, who you're called to come and talk to, is so important and so vital for winning elections, for getting messages out there, for getting the truth out there. It's just, how do you do that?
Right. Well, one is money, as we already talked about, but there's so many other ways, and I've learned some through campaigns that just texting or doing a phone call to 10 of your closest friends in your community can go a really long way. So Hannah, you have anything else wanted to share, give a perspective on? And you mentioned you're going to law school, so that's coming up this fall, so I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, we're real excited about it, and I think Alice just said it best, and I'll even take what she said one step further about working for a losing campaign. We had the even more unique experience because of the lack of money, that it got to be so grassroots. So I got thrown into positions that I never in a million, if you had told me 6 months before that that's what I was going to be doing, I would have thought you were crazy. But I found that I loved it and I thrived in those roles. And so I got to learn a lot about myself, which to somebody so young coming up in this world, that is huge. And that's life-changing. And that really helps project your path forward. And it really helps me have a clear mindset going into law school because, I took a huge leap going to law school in the first place. I have a biology degree, for those of you who don't know. So it was a huge shock to the whole world when I decided to go to law school. But I'm so excited. I'm getting to go in, again, with my great outlook on Arkansas, just a whole new adventure into a whole new world. And I can't wait to see what happens for the state. And I want to be involved and active in every way possible in it. And I'm just thrilled with the opportunity.
Great. Well, Alice and Hannah, thank you for coming in today. Really good to hear the perspective of our young Republicans, young conservatives in this state, and for being engaged and involved. And so we're going to go ahead and take a break now. Sorry for some of the technical difficulties we have. Appreciate the audience patience this morning, but want to thank Hannah Webb and Alice Norman for being here with us. You're listening to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul today, and we'll be back after this break.
What does the name Triple R have to do with bail bonds? Well, the Triple R stands for reliable, respectful, and relentless. When in need of bail bonds, you only need one number. Call 866-593-7457. Even if Triple R can't help, they'll take the time to provide you with the numbers of other bond companies in your area that can be of service. That's why they're the hub of Arkansas bail bonds. Triple R Bail Bonds has an app, they're paperless, and always reliable, respectful, and relentless. Come to Triple R Furniture and see our sofas, recliners, bedroom suites, and more. At Triple R Furniture, we'll deliver up to 50 miles away, and we're here to help you with all of your furniture needs. Triple R Furniture gives you the option to buy furniture outright or rent to own. We strive to make the financing process as easy as possible, which is why everyone is approved. At Triple R Furniture, we offer financing terms for 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. We also offer a manager special. Come see us at the Highland Shopping Center in Highland, Arkansas for details. Customer satisfaction is our top priority at Triple R Furniture. Call us today at 870-856-8003 or find us on the web at triplerfurniture.com.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Conduit News Radio. This is Josh Waters filling in for Paul Harrell today, and we've had a really great show, really jam-packed. Earlier today, we talked extensively about the new plea agreement for Rusty Cranford, Arkansas lobbyist who has pleaded guilty to bribery of a federal program and has further implicated now convicted felon John Woods, Hank Wilkins, who has pleaded guilty, and further Senator A in this plea agreement, which the Arkansas Democrat Gazette has identified as Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew. And I encourage everyone to go listen to the first hour of the show where we went into detail of the plea agreement and kind of question also, why has Senator Jeremy Hutchinson not been indicted? He's been mentioned now in this plea agreement. He's been speculated about in the plea agreement of Hank Wilkins as well. And so that was the first corruption scandal that we had yesterday break here in Arkansas. But unfortunately, with the culture of corruption in Arkansas, we had two bribery scandals break in the same day. That's right, a 2-for-1, unfortunately, today on Conduit News, talking about bribery scandals. The second bribery scandal that broke yesterday regarded the Medical Marijuana Commission. And if we look at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette's homepage and we go over to the headline is AG's letter, says Arkansas Medical Marijuana Commission member got offer of a bribe. And so I think 2 days ago, Paul covered this letter that they wanted to submit under seal. We talked about yesterday how this letter was under seal with the court. And we talked about yesterday how some of the attorneys didn't think this was right to be able to shield this process. You know, this is a public process, a public commission, and to be able to shield that, it just wasn't right and came to light. So the Supreme Court yesterday did release the letter. And man, was there a bombshell in that. It was revealed, and I think we can pull up the letter for our online audience watching at conduitnews.com. We can look at this letter from the Arkansas Attorney General to the Supreme Court Chief Justice Dan Kemp. And this is where it breaks down how there was a bribe offered to one of the medical marijuana commissioners from one of the people who applied for a license to grow and cultivate the marijuana. So we'll just dive right into this. It says, in our briefing in this case, we made presentations to the court that the scoring process was not arbitrary and capricious, which was what the cause of action was for, and that each commissioner followed all the applicable rules, and that no commissioner was biased or committed improprieties. These statements in different iterations occur throughout our briefing, the abstract and the addendum. So that's what they represented to the court, and that was the reason they had to file this letter, is because they found out new information that didn't really back up those assertions. So they go on from Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General. It says, last week we were presented with additional allegations concerning application scoring and other improprieties in the cultivation licensing process. While most of these allegations remain unsubstantiated in the present time, we have learned the following. A commissioner has said that he was offered a bribe by an applicant and that he did not report that offered bribe. The entity in question is Natural State Agronomics, and we'll get more to that entity and who's behind that in a minute. But the commissioner has said he did not accept the bribe. He said he gave the entity the second highest score that was he awarded to any entity in the application process, but maintains he did not accept the bribe. It should be noted that there is no specific law or regulation requiring a commissioner to report a bribe attempt, and we have no evidence that the commissioner took the bribe or based his scoring on the offer. Still, we believe we needed to provide these facts to the court here. We believe the court should seal this letter, and then it goes further into why they thought it should be sealed. And ultimately the letter was sealed, and it has come out. They released it yesterday. But even after this letter came out, what was fascinating to me was thinking, the state is still maintaining this was a fair process, nothing wrong with this process. After this letter came out, they made the argument to the court that this shouldn't cloud their judgment on this issue, that this was still a fair process, that everything was okay with this, even though there's been multiple allegations now of bias against several of the commissioners. so that's a whole nother issue. But the idea that in Arkansas you can just bribe your way to get a license, you can just bribe your way to get kickbacks from lobbyists in Arkansas is just rampant in our state right now in this culture of corruption. And so let's go back to the letter. It mentions the specific entity that allegedly made this bribe was Natural State Agronomics. And I was doing some research last night. Well, who is this entity? Because, behind the entity is the main players. And so when you go online, there's several articles about this entity. One in particular was an article from KARK. Excuse me. And this was written last year, and the headline is Medical Cannabis Company Hopes to Grow in Jefferson County. And this is about Natural State Agronomics and their facilities and everything that they were wanting to do to set up a medical marijuana cultivation facility. And when you go down through here, it tells you exactly who is behind this entity. First, we have a quote from a Philip Stroud. He says, the largest complex of its kind in the southern United States. So that's Philip Stroud, one of the players here. And then it says the man behind it all is Jefferson County native Ken Schollmeyer, who has given a lot to the natural state but isn't one for the spotlight. And so it talks about some of his work there. Well, then, okay, now we have the name, right? We have the name Ken Schollmeyer. Well, who is Ken Schollmeyer? So we did some further digging here at Conduit News. We wanted to know, okay, if someone is out there alleging that there's a bribe, let's find out who this person is behind the bribe. And so when looking up this name, Ken Schollmeyer, one of the first things that came up was an appointment of Ken Schollmeyer. And I think we have it for our online audience. It's a press release from the governor, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, and it's January 26th of 2015. It says Governor Hutchinson announces 5 appointments to boards and commissions. So this would have been almost immediately after Asa Hutchinson took over as governor is whenever this appointment came in. And right there, a couple of lines down, Ken Schollmeyer of Little Rock, who was appointed by Governor Asa Hutchinson to the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. His appointment expires January 14th, 2019. So the guy who is allegedly, now I want to be clear because Ken Schollmeyer has gone on the record and is denying all of this. I want to make sure we put that in there because he is denying that this happened, and he's been very clear in that in some media reports and statements he's given to other media. He is denying that he bribed one of the medical marijuana commissioners. But the allegation is out there and we're covering it. So who is Ken Schollmeyer? He's been appointed to the Arkansas Economic Development Commission by Asa Hutchinson. This is the AEDC, as it's commonly referred to, that routinely doles out money to Chinese corporations and all kinds of other corporate welfare programs to the politically connected businesses, which is really quashing small business in Arkansas, but that's another issue. So he is on this Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Some other research I was doing, you can go to AEDC and see Ken Schollmeyer there. Some other research I was doing is with this new system of campaign finance that we have here in Arkansas, you can download every contribution straight into a spreadsheet. And so what I did was just search Schollmeyer to find any entries. And whenever we did that, we find that Ken Schollmeyer, or the last name Schollmeyer, actually came up 3 times for this latest election cycle. And whenever we look at that, all 3 donations were to Governor Asa Hutchinson. On April 10th, 2018, Ken Schollmeyer donated $1,700 to Governor Asa Hutchinson's campaign. On October 2nd of 2017, he donated $1,000 to Asa Hutchinson's campaign. And then also on April 10th, Linda Sue Schollmeyer, she has the same address as Ken Schollmeyer, so I believe that's his wife, donated $800 to Governor Asa Hutchinson. And when you go search some more for that name, he's a very successful businessman. It looks like he's donated a lot of money to the University of Arkansas. And so that's the news that came out yesterday of the Medical Marijuana Commission. And, basically the argument is that it was set up in an unfair way. There are biased commissioners. There's at least one alleged to have been offered a bribe from one of the applicants who was trying to get a license from this Natural State Agronomics. Again, Ken Schollmeyer, Natural State Agronomics, is denying that this happened, but this was a letter that was submitted from the Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, to the Supreme Court under seal and was revealed yesterday. We can get some more into specifics on the Arkansas Democrat Gazette's website. Actually, let's go over to the Arkansas Times. They had a good post on this. The Arkansas Times, with the headline, Supreme Court releases sealed document that says marijuana commissioner was offered a bribe. Like we've talked about today, released a letter submitted under seal by Attorney General this week in the medical marijuana case. It says an investigation is underway of a reported effort by one applicant for a marijuana cultivation permit to bribe a member of the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Commission. And then there's the excerpt we've already read. And again, what we kind of talked about, the state, of course, then argued in favor of preserving the commission's choice of 5 winning applicants, that the process had been fair. They're telling the court, hey, one of the commissioners there was an attempted bribe. That's what they're saying they've been told from the authorities in the letter. But then at the same time, they're before the Supreme Court arguing, but don't pay attention to that. This was a fair process. I mean, wow. It says the Supreme Court had allowed counsel for parties in the case to see the letter and asked whether they thought it should be sealed. Attorneys for 3 winning applicants said the letter shouldn't be admitted, and, that makes sense for them. If they've already won a license, they don't want to have to go through this process again. They said it was too late. They said one unsuccessful applicant asked that the letter be released. Natural State Agronomics, which again is the entity that was alleged to offer a bribe to one of the commissioners who would be making decision and scoring the applicants for these licenses. They said that the letter shouldn't be considered in the case. Its lawyer wrote in a motion that acknowledged an allegation of unlawful conduct by his client. So this is attorney Robert Tishmer wrote in a motion. He says, the undersigned counsel has no knowledge of these assertions. The following is true, however, and are reasons this court should strike the motion and tendered exhibit. It is improper to make this motion and letter a part of this record because the record in this case is complete and the appellate court may not consider matters outside the record. A party is innocent until proven guilty, and if or when that occurs, the state may file any available action in the law, but to bring allegations before this court at this time is improper, unfairly prejudicial, and outside the rule of law. And then we have an update down here. It says the state police has no open investigation related to Calais, which makes it likely that this could be a white-collar investigation by the FBI. I mean, gosh, the FBI's probably set up a whole nother branch in Arkansas with all the corruption we have going on. My goodness, they're probably wondering about what the average voter is how can this keep going on? How can the taxpayers of Arkansas, how can the citizens and the voters keep putting up with this year after year, election cycle after election cycle? And that has a link there. You can actually go online and look up at all the applications. The alleged bribery happened to Dr. Carlos Roman, who is the commissioner who comes under scrutiny for an outlier of a score for the top finisher, Natural State Medicinals, with the 98, gave only one other applicant a score in the 90s. And then this is where the statement from Ken Schollmeyer himself. It says, I reached Ken Schollmeyer, it's from the Arkansas Times, he said, who's been a spokesman for Natural State. He said his attorney had instructed him not to speak, but said any suggestion he or his venture had acted improperly is, quote, it's not right. He said the day's development was a surprise to him. If there's an investigation, he said, they can talk to me anytime. I haven't done anything. So that's from the Arkansas Times. The Democrat Gazette has a good article on it as well. But, folks, that's where we're at in the natural state today here in Arkansas. 2 bribery scandals breaking on the same day yesterday. First, the guilty plea agreement broke the bribery screen and really broke it open from what had been talked about already about Senator Jeremy Hutchinson's described as Senator A by the Democrat Gazette as being bribed by Rusty Cranford. Part of the bribe was actually attorney's fees, really flying in the face of the exact bills that would have prevented stuff like this happening from Senator Brian King and Senator Linda Collins Smith and Asa Hutchinson, really tied to all this, taking donations from Mr. Schulmeyer. The connection we talked about to the 2 U.S. attorneys in the state who would maybe bring charges against Senator Hutchinson. That was the first major scandal, and then now the Medical Marijuana Commission has a alleged bribe that took place. So, folks, I just hope, if you're online, facebook.com/Conduit News, please share this video. We must get the information out to the people for anything to change. If we just keep letting millions and millions of dollars be spent to hide this and focus on other things, nothing's going to change. And so go share the video, share this information with your friends, be active, get registered to vote. But this is Josh Waters filling in for Paul Harrell on Conduit News. It's been a pleasure being with you, and everyone have a great, great weekend.